Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Brian's Horror Corner, and welcome to this horror Blu-ray movie review video as part of my current series in September here, where I'm taking a look at random horror movies, watching and reviewing random horror movies from my Blu-ray collection. Um, so yeah, we're gonna kick this thing off with the first movie, and given the time of the year it is, September, two things come to mind when I think of September: football and kids going back to school. And so I love football, but I love kids having to go back to school even more, especially having a 7-year-old son myself. So um, that being said, I thought I would pick a movie that's very much related to a school setting. In this case, a high school setting horror movie. And that, of course, is the sci-fi horror movie The Faculty from 1998 that I have on Blu-ray and the digital code here. Now, actually, I don't know if I have the digital code. I'll probably never need it. I'll watch it on Blu-ray. But now this movie is interesting because it came out 25 years ago, which is, gotta talk about making me feel old. 1998 being 25 years ago. But um, this was the first time I'd ever watched this movie, believe it or not, which is weird for me because from about 1999 through 2009, I was constantly going to the video store, renting DVDs of all kinds from the 80s, the 90s. I would probably rent a movie or two every other weekend or something. So I watched a lot of horror movies that way. For me not to have ever rented this one, I don't know why, but I didn't. And it's funny because when I was watching it for this review, my wife walked in and said, "Oh, The Faculty. I used to watch this with my brother at nauseum." And if you know my wife, she's not really a huge horror movie fan. She likes about five horror movies. But I guess she watched this all the time with her younger brother back around 2000 or so, which is funny because considering that I'm the big horror buff between us, and she'd seen this movie 20 years ago, and I had yet to see it going into September 2023 here. So, anyway, I just thought that was kind of interesting. I did kind of know the synopsis for this movie. I knew it was about high school. I knew obviously some of the people that were going to be in it. I'd seen the trailer for it. It definitely looked interesting, very much sci-fi, very much an alien invasion of the body snatchers kind of horror movie. And so, yeah, let's just go ahead and get into my thoughts about this one. The Faculty from 1998. Um, so, The Faculty is a 1998 American science fiction horror film directed by Robert Rodriguez, who I believe directed From Dusk Until Dawn in 1996, with the screenplay by Kevin Williamson, who, of course, wrote the first two Scream movies. Also, I Know What You Did Last Summer. Let's see, one. So basically, the film opens one evening at Harrington High School in Ohio. Teachers and Principal Drake leave after discussing the school's budget. When Drake returns to retrieve her keys, she is attacked by the school's football coach, Joe Willis. Drama teacher Mrs. Olson emotionless. Okay, let me try this again. Mrs. Olson emotionlessly, there we go, stabs Drake with scissors and she flees the school. The following morning, the students arrive, including Casey Connor, the dedicated but perpetually harassed photography for the school newspaper. Casey is the unappreciated assistant to spiteful Delilah Prophet, the paper's editor in chief and head cheerleader. Delilah's mistreated boyfriend, Stan Rosato, is contemplating quitting the football team to pursue academics. Zeke Tyler is an intelligent yet rebellious student repeating his senior year. Zeke sells, among other illegal items, a powdery ecstasy like drug he distributes hidden in ballpoint pens. He is confronted by teacher Elizabeth Burke, who expresses concern for him over his illegal activities. Naive transfer student Mary Beth Louise Hutchinson befriends self styled outcast Stokely Mitchell, who has deliberately spread rumors who has deliberately spread rumors that she is a lesbian, though she has a crush on Stan. Mary Beth develops a crush on Zeke, which is reciprocated. So yeah, so that's kind of the gist, the beginning of the introduction to the faculty from 1998. As far as the cast goes, it's got a large cast, a lot of knowable names and recognizable faces, especially for this time. I just named a few of them here. Jordana Brewster is Delilah Prophet. Clea Duvall as Stokely Mitchell, Laura Harris as Mary Beth Hutchinson, Josh Hartnett as Zeke Tyler, Sean Hattasey as Stan Rosato, Selma Hayek as Nurse Harper, Famke Janssen as Mrs. Burke or Miss Burke, Piper Laurie as Mrs. Olson, Robert Patrick as Coach Willis, and Elijah Wood as Casey Connor. So yeah, that's to set up the premise and the cast. Excuse me, for the 1998 horror sci-fi film The Faculty. Um, I have to say, man, I really enjoyed this movie. I had a lot of fun with it. It's not necessarily like overly scary, although it does have some nice, creepy, tense moments. But it's just so much fun, especially given the time, the vibes that they're going for, the atmosphere, the cast, just kind of everything about it. But let's just go ahead and get into it. Um, Starting with the pros, of course, are the things that I liked about the movie. And I'm going to start with the cast. I think this is a cast who's is basically a who's who of the time, both main characters and side characters, both teens and adults, or the staff, the teachers in this case. Really recognizable and fun to have in the movie. There's even names I didn't mention, like Usher. I think this was his first movie, and he just released an album the year before, I believe. You have Christopher McDonald in this movie. You have Bebe Neuwirth from Cheers in this movie, Lilith. Yeah, it's really just a who's who and just a really fun cast that really adds to the sort of the mythos of the movie and just the fun of the movie. And you can tell a lot of the cast is having a good time. They know what kind of movie they're in here, and especially somebody like Robert Patrick who knows and really just really gives it his all for this character and this type of role that he's in. So I really enjoyed the cast in this movie. Really fun. I love the setting of the high school and the overall atmosphere that this movie has going on. It's dripping of 90s so much. Like every scene is just it's just dripping of 90s. It reeks of the 90s basically, and that's incredibly fun and entertaining, especially for somebody like me that graduated in 1997. So I was in high school in the mid late 90s, and so I could totally relate to a lot of what was going on, and just really had a lot of fun with that whole thing, the high schools in the 90s and all that. Just really fun and entertaining. I thought the performances were really solid. Talking again about the cast, I especially enjoyed Clea Duvall, Laura Harris, Robert Patrick, and Elijah Wood. I thought them specifically really did a good job. Again, given the kind of movie that they were in, portraying these characters, they all bring so much to this movie with those characters. Those guys really stood out to me, but really the entire cast is in it to win it basically in this movie, and I really felt that and had a really good time with it. It's a very well written, not surprisingly, Kevin Williamson movie that is smart and fun, clever. It's not just your typical teen horror movie, although it is kind of a typical teen horror movie of the time. Williamson kind of writes it to throw that on its head a little bit, and I enjoyed that. Um, the characters are actually have some real life drama going on aside from the sci-fi elements of this movie. Um, and while some of them are, they're all definitely written stereotypical, like teens. Like you have the goth girl, you have the kind of awkward nerdy guy photographer, you have sort of the outcast, too cool for school guy, and Josh Hartnett. You know, you have the bitchy cheerleader type and Jordana Brewster's character. So you kind of have all those things, but yet as the movie plays out, by the end of the movie, they're very different than they were at the beginning of the movie. There's just a lot of interesting and clever writing that went on in this movie. So I really enjoyed that. Um, it really works well in terms of having a nice arc for a lot of these characters by the end of the movie. Um, I thought they did a really good job with the use of practical effects. Like when this movie uses practical effects, especially as it relates to a creature towards the end of this movie, it's really well done. It's really, really good. I really enjoy it. The creature effects towards the end, as I mentioned, those effects are fantastic, and I think they hold up really well, despite the fact this movie being 25 years old. God, I love practical effects. I wish, well, that's a different video, but I really wish other movies would utilize practical effects. I know it takes a lot longer and they're a lot more expensive to do, and I know budgets and things like that is why studios and movie makers reach for CGI. But the practical effects are really good in this movie when they're used. Obviously, I love the score and the soundtrack to this movie. Again, being late '90s, and again, me having been in high school in the '90s, there's a lot of fun nostalgia that this movie has, especially related to the soundtrack and the music that's played throughout this movie. It's just very, very, very mid to late '90s, very fun. I also thought this movie had a really good mystery to it in terms of who started all this. Like, who's the queen, basically, to take an alien reference. Who's the one that they have to try to get rid of in order to stop everybody else. It has a really nice twist with that. I will admit, I did not see it coming as far as who the queen was. Maybe I should have. Other people probably did, but again, the writing by Kevin Williamson and the execution of this movie made it so that I don't think the twist was that obvious, but it worked really well because it also wasn't a twist where it was somebody completely out of nowhere. Like you saw their picture at the very beginning of the movie or something in a photograph, and all of a sudden they show up. I mean, it's somebody that's in this movie, and I thought they did a really good job with that. And so, again, good writing, good execution. And then my final pro, and I could have more, but I'm going to stop here. My final pro is I really thought the movie was well paced from beginning to end. I was never checked out or bored at any time during this movie. It's a really good time overall. It's just a really fun, good time. And even though I think the movie is about an hour and 40 minutes, so it does go past that 90-minute mark that I tend to like my horror movies for. It was just like I said, it was so well written. I was developed with the characters, the story, the twists, that some of the practical effects that it never felt like I said, it never felt a bore. I was engaged. I wanted to see where this was going to go and how they were going to overcome, and they did it. So yeah, great pacing to this movie, really fun. So those are my pros. I only have a couple of cons. The biggest one's the CGI, which you probably knew I was getting to, as I mentioned, with the practical effects when they used them in this movie. You kind of knew the other side of that coin was coming, but there's some really dated and bad looking CGI used in this movie, especially as it relates to certain alien effects like tentacles coming out on somebody's face or tentacles out of somebody's neck when they lose their head and that has to take them back to their body. Famke Janssen, basically. Um, a lot of CGI, and it's bad CGI. It's that bad early '90s when CGI first became a thing that just looks terrible. Um, yeah, it's just what can you say? If you know my channel, you know me. You know I don't like CGI, other than in very rare circumstances when it's used for the right reasons in the right way. But that wasn't the case when they used it in this movie. I also have to say I didn't care for some of the camera work, especially like the quick zoom ins and cuts and zoom out. Some of the camera work wasn't didn't really work for me overall for this movie. Although the cinematography's fine, it's not Oscar worthy. It's not the worst I've ever seen, but some of those camera tricks and I didn't really care for. It just kind of felt like it was lacking to me in that regard. And it might be a Robert Rodriguez thing. I'm not really sure. Although I don't remember seeing that in Dusk Until Dawn. Maybe it was there. I need to rewatch that movie at some point. I haven't seen it in a lot of years. But it just kind of feels like it's all over the place a little bit, the camera work. And then the final thing is there are a number well, two things. There are a number of fake out jump scares that was kind of typical of this time. And obviously, that's not really my jam if you've watched my other reviews. Um, it's not really that scary. Like I said, if you're looking for a horror movie that's going to give you the heebie jeebies or make you look over your shoulder, it's probably not the place to go. Although it does have some nice, creepy moments, I have to say. And then the other thing is, I didn't find it lame, but some people might find it lame. The whole idea that this movie came up with it to stop all of the aliens, you have to kill the queen. Obviously, that was sort of an alien ripoff, as well as some other movies. This movie's a combination, sort of alien invasion of the body snatcher and Scream. I would say those three kind of combined to make the faculty here, but. So that's I know that's not everybody's jam. I've seen some reviews, heard some things that people didn't like the fact that you just got to find the queen, figure out who it is and kill them, and then everybody else goes back to normal. I don't know. That didn't take me out of the movie. I didn't care about that. I thought this movie was really well done, very well written, very fun. It reeks of the '90s, so there's a lot of nostalgia I have for it, even though I didn't watch it in the '90s. The nostalgia is more based on the time I was in high school, which is the same as this time. Um, good effects, good characters, given the genre that it's in, the time that it came out. I think this is actually one of the more underrated '90s movies that I don't hear enough about, quite frankly, as far as horror goes. And I'm going to give this movie an 8.5 out of 10. I really had a good time with it, and I highly recommend The Faculty. I would highly recommend going out and buying it. Definitely watching it. So 8.5 out of 10 for The Faculty from 1998. I have on Blu-ray here. Go ahead and comment down below if you guys have seen The Faculty. What do you think of it? Do you like it as much as I do? Even more, maybe less? Why not? Please like this video and hit the little notification bell down below so you don't miss any of my upcoming reviews for this series. 9 more movies to go. Like my DVD horror series a couple months ago, I'm going to try to do 10 movies in the month of September, so about every 3 days. But please be sure to subscribe to my channel as well so you don't miss any of my great horror content, not only this series, but what I have coming out in the next several months and into next year, including October. You don't want to miss October on my channel. Trust me on that one. Of course, I'll have an intro video at the end of September to give a little bit more detail about that. But I hope everybody's doing well, having a good Labor Day weekend, getting ready for that time of the year, school and football. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review. And of course, stay scared. Bye.